Hello and thank you for watching. Today I'm going to show you how to build a solar generator. This guy right here. Alright, so there's two different kinds that we're going to cover. This is a 240 watt generator. It's built out of an ammo box. This box is large enough to hold a 240 watt deep cycle battery. I'm also going to cover a 420 watt solar generator. This is a larger ammo box. This will hold a 420 watt deep cycle battery. I didn't install the voltmeter on this one. We're going to cover how to install all of the ports and units that are required for this to operate as a solar generator. I'm going to start by covering the basic tools that you're going to need to build this generator. Number one tool, you're going to need a drill. If you don't have a drill, you can find one at Home Depot. You don't have to spend a lot of money. This is just a basic 12 volt drill. You could buy one that you plug directly into the wall for about $30. If you want to find one even cheaper, you could probably find one on eBay for even less than that. Next thing you're going to need is a screwdriver. Next, you're going to need wire cutter. It's a wire cutting and stripping tool, and it's also got a crimper on there. It's this indentation that you see here. You're going to use that for crimping the quick disconnects on your wire. You can find this at Home Depot in the electrical department. I saw a pair of these at Walmart just the other day for only $6. Again, you could probably find it on eBay for significantly less. To drill the holes in the ammo box, these things are made out of metal, you're going to need, this is called a step-up drill bit. And you can see the ridges going all the way down. The purpose of this drill bit is that you can drill different sized holes using all the same drill bit. You just keep going in until the hole is as big as you want, and then you stop. This sells at Home Depot for $50, which is pretty ridiculous. It's just a drill bit. I found this drill bit on eBay for $10, so I'll show you where to find this for a lot less than $50. Alright, this is not really necessary, kind of optional, but I have here a pair of pliers which might be handy when you're cutting and manipulating wires, and then basic wire cutters, which also we have on the pliers. So you don't have to have these, but they can be useful during the construction process. Alright, that's about it for basic tools. You could use a soldering iron, and I'll explain why later. You don't have to have a soldering iron. You can find one for about $10 at Radio Shack. It will have everything that you need except for the flux. We'll cover all that later. Don't worry about that right now. Again, it's not necessary. It's not completely necessary to have. So next I'm going to go over the different components that you're going to need to build these generators. Okay, we just covered the basic tools that you're going to need to do the job. Now I'm going to go over all of the parts that you're going to need to build this solar generator. Now I'm going to show you these parts, and don't worry about where to find them, because I'm going to include with this video a list with hyperlinks. I'm going to show you exactly where to find each and every one of these parts for the absolute best prices on the internet. Alright. The first thing that you're going to need is an ammo box. Okay? The first one, the one that I showed you before, was in better shape and it was painted, but we're going to be using this for the demonstration purposes. I'll show you where to find that later. The second thing that you're going to need is the heart of the generator, which would be the battery. Now this is a Rayovac deep cycle battery. I found it at Walmart for 20 bucks. I recommend that you use a VMAX deep cycle battery. This battery is only rated at 75 watts. The one I'm going to show you is 240 watts, and it's the biggest one that will fit in this box. And then for the larger box that I showed you before, you can use a VMAX 420 watt battery. The next thing you're going to need is a USB port. Okay, show you front and the back. Alright, so this is a 2-port device. It's got a 1 amp outlet and a 2.1 amp outlet. You're also going to need a 12 volt outlet. That. Okay. You're going to need a faceplate. You don't have to have this, but I think it looks a lot better with it. This will hold the outlets in place. It'll kind of help you space them out when you install them. Next is your voltmeter. We have a blade fuse holder. This is a 15 amp fuse. Quick disconnects. And I'll explain what this is later and how to use it. It's basically for connecting your wires. Then we have our terminal connectors. Again, I'll explain what this is later and how to use it. Depending on which battery you use, you can use, this is called a wiretap. Now, there's 2 different types of batteries that you can install in these devices. There's the one that I showed you before, and it's got these little tabs, and that's where you would connect your wires, that's your positive and your negative. Those are actually a little bit more complicated to work with. I recommend that you use one with these kinds of connectors on it. We've got these little bolts that simply unscrew, and you can connect your wires on this way. This is much simpler to work with, and I recommend that you choose this kind of battery. But I'm going to show you how to use both. Alright, next you're going to need a switch. Notice there's 3 prongs on this switch. I'll explain what these prongs are for. You're going to need self-tapping screws. These screws drill the hole first. And you can see the end, it's actually got a drilling bit at the end of it. So it drills the hole, and then you can just keep going and screw it in. Last but not least, you're going to need wire. Now this is 14 gauge 17 amp wire. I find that it works quite well. I recommend that you get black wire and red wire. Black is for negative, red is for positive. When you're looking inside your box after you've completed your project, it just helps to distinguish what's what. You want to know what's positive and what's negative, and it's best if you can tell at first glance. You're also going to need a permanent marker. I forgot to include this on the tools list before. You're going to need it. Alright. Now I'm going to go over each one of these parts, how they work. I'm going to talk about wiring. I'm going to show you some wiring diagrams to explain how to connect all these things together and make them work the way that you want them to work. So that's coming up next. Okay, I'm going to show you some diagrams. I'm going to go over each part and I'm going to explain how to wire it. Now I've got here our first diagram. I want to start with the battery. Obviously we've got our negative and positive. Now everything is going to connect to the battery, of course. Alright, so the first item is going to be our switch. Okay, now I don't know if you can see here, we've got 3 prongs. One of them is gold. Alright, the gold is going to be your negative terminal. The other 2 are positive. Now you can see here on our diagram, this over here is your switch, and the purpose of the switch is to control your USB outlet. It's what turns the USB outlet on and off. Okay? So, we've got the USB outlet here. This is positive and this is negative. So you see the 2 prongs, positive and negative. Okay? And it shows you actually on the actual device. There's the plus sign, there's negative sign, so positive, negative. Alright. Now the positive terminal on the USB outlet is first going to run to the positive terminal on the switch. Remember, we've got 3 prongs. The gold one on the far, if you're right side, is negative. Then you've got positive and positive. Now the purpose of the switch is to break the electrical current when you turn it off. So positive terminal goes to positive terminal. Then the second positive terminal on that switch goes to the positive terminal on the battery. So you've got a flow of electricity going from positive through the switch to the positive terminal on the USB port. So this is one flow. When you turn the switch off, it breaks that flow of electricity. So from the switch, we go positive to positive, positive to positive. Okay. The negative terminal on the switch goes to the negative terminal on the battery. The only purpose of that terminal is to control the LED light on the switch. It needs the both positive and negative electrical currents in order to turn that light on. This has nothing to do with the operation of the USB outlet. It's just for the light. So again, positive to positive, positive to positive, negative to negative. I hope that's clear. Next, we're going to cover our 12 volt meter, which is over here. Not meter, I'm sorry, 12 volt port, which is here. Again, we've got 2 prongs. Okay, it tells you right on there, positive, negative. Alright, so here's our positive connector going to positive terminal, going to the positive terminal on the battery, positive to positive, negative to negative. Okay, now we've got our voltmeter. Obviously, the only purpose of this is to tell the voltage of the battery. So you're going from negative terminal to negative terminal, positive to positive. If you want to control the voltmeter with the switch, you can actually tap into the positive wire going from the switch to the USB port, and so it would actually look like this. So we've got our positive wire going to the USB port. Now this positive wire would simply connect here instead of continuing over here. Okay, so now we're going to go positive to positive, so we're on the same wire as the USB port. Now when you turn the switch off, it's going to break your positive electrical current, so both the voltmeter and the USB port will turn off. Okay, so that's it for the wiring. Now we're actually going to go through and connect all this stuff together. I hope that this is comprehensible. If not, shoot me an email and I'll explain it. Okay, we're going to begin installing each one of these devices and components. And we're going to start with our ammo box, and I'm going to take this lid off. These lids are actually pretty easy to remove. You open it and you slide it to the right and pull it off. Now, as you saw on the first one, we had our voltmeter and our USB port, which was over here. And then our voltmeter was in the middle. Okay, so we're going to start by installing the two ports. And for that, you're going to need your faceplate and you're going to need your marker. Now, you can get your measuring tape out and get this thing exactly perfectly centered. I'm just going to eyeball it for this one. Now, if you notice, your lid comes down at an angle, so I like to center it between here and the bottom. So that's what I'm going to do. So we're going to put it about right there. Now, when you are installing this, you want it to be as close to the edge as possible. And the reason is because you want to leave as much room inside the box as you possibly can for the battery. Because this is obviously going to go inside the box and it's going to take up some space in there. So you want there to be room, as much room as you can get. And we're going to start by drilling a hole. Before we can do that, we want to know exactly where the hole is going to be. I'm going to turn this faceplate over, and I'm going to outline exactly where each port is going to go. And you get your plate where you want it, get your marker, and simply trace the inside for both the top and the bottom. Okay? So that's where your holes are going to go. Now we want to find the exact center so that when we're drilling, we don't accidentally mess it up. I'm going to go... Now this isn't going to be exact, but I find that it works well enough. This just kind of helps you get closer to the middle. It's not perfect, but it works. We're going to take our drill, take our step-up drill, now these boxes are made out of metal, so this can be a little bit choppy. I'm going to try to keep it as still as possible while I'm doing this. The drill bit likes to move around a little bit when you're first starting off, so you just want to move slow, readjust until you've got a decent indentation that holds it in place. There we go. Now you see, I got a little bit off when I started that hole. What I'm going to do as I'm drilling, I want to try to pull this back to the center of my circle. So as I'm drilling, I'm going to push my drill this way. I want it to go this way. So I'm going to apply more pressure to the right than the left. So I'm going to apply pressure going this way as I drill in. And you can see I'm getting a little more centered here. Now you can see I'm almost perfectly centered, so now I can just go straight down. Okay, now you'll notice I actually went all the way in with my drill bit. This drill bit is exactly the perfect size. It is 1 1/8 of an inch. So when you're shopping on eBay, this is the size that you want. I'll actually find one for you and send you a link as part of your list of supplies. 1 1/8 inch. Okay, now we're going to do our second one, but I'm not going to make you watch me do this twice. Okay, we've got our holes drilled now. We're ready to go ahead and install our 2 ports. Here's our faceplate, goes right on there. Now we've got our 12-volt outlet and our USB outlet. Now these ports have a little ring that screws on the back. This is what holds it in place. We're just going to take this off. Now, as I mentioned before, these holes are actually the perfect size. They're almost too perfect because you can't just slide it in. You actually have to screw it in. So, we're gonna... And it can be difficult to catch the threads just right so that it actually screws on. But we're gonna finagle this in place. Alright, we've got our first port installed. Now we just take our ring, threaded ring, and we're going to put it in the, screw it onto the back. Okay, there's the first port. Now we're going to do our 12-volt. Alright, we've got our ports installed. It's the USB port, and we've got our 12-volt outlet. The wiring is not in place yet. We will go over that. We're going to refer back to the diagrams that I showed you before, and hopefully I can make it clear and easy for you to understand. Next thing we're going to install is our power switch, and we'll put that up here. You can measure and get this exactly centered with your measuring tape. I'm going to eyeball it. Okay, we're going to put it here. I'm going to go, I like to get it as close to the top as possible. Now remember, this is a step-up drill, so you just go until it's as big as you want and then you stop. Okay, we still got quite a ways to go. You just want to stop periodically and check to see if it'll fit. If not, you keep going. There we go. Now, you can see there's little clasps on the edges of these buttons, switches. So you just pop this in place and you just push it until it snaps in. Just like that. And it won't come back out because those clamps on the inside hold it. So, there's your power switch. Next is our SAE port. When we install this port, we want to get it as close to the edge as we possibly can. And we want it to go up and down, not side to side. The reason is because we want to leave as much room for the battery as possible. So we're going to install it like this, as far this way as we can get it. So we're going to start by figuring out exactly where that is. So I'm going to say we can start right about here. Now the cool thing about this port is that we can make the hole really as big as we want, and that gives us room to move it around. Alright, now notice I made this hole a lot bigger than it actually needs to be. The reason is because we've got this flange that goes around, and it gives us the ability to move this port side to side and up and down so that we can get it exactly where we want it. It's just easier than trying to get perfect measurements. I still want to go a little bit more to the left, and I can't, so I'm going to make this hole bigger. Okay, we have now made this hole as large as our drill bit will allow us to. And there we go. So that's perfectly aligned with each edge. And that's it. Okay, now it's time to use our self-tapping or self-drilling screws. This plate here is already attached because the ports are holding it in place, but we want to make it even more secure and we want to fill in these holes. So we're going to put screws here, and then we are going to attach our SAE port so that we can plug this thing into the wall or a solar panel and get it charging. We'll be putting one screw in each of these holes to anchor this in place. So we'll start with this. And the beauty of these screws is that you don't need a drill bit because the screw is a drill bit and a screw all in one. So you just put it in place. And there you go. Doesn't get much easier than that. Okay, our ports are now fully installed. The size on these screws, by the way, is 3/8 of an inch. Number 6. Now we're going to install the SAE port. Remember, you want it to go up and down, not side to side. So, just like that. There you go. There's your SAE port. Alright, the last and final step for installing our components is to install the voltmeter. It's the same basic concept as installing the USB outlets and the 12 volt outlets. The only difference is we're not going to have a faceplate on this one. It's just going to go smack in the middle. For this one I actually am going to measure because we want it to be dead center. Okay, there's the hole for our voltmeter. So, same thing. Just gonna screw that in. This goes in a lot easier because it's a lot shorter. Okay. Now on the inside, we simply want to put the ring on. Make sure that the meter is straight. And then tighten the back of the ring down. There we go. There's our voltmeter. Okay, now we're going to start wiring. Alright, there's two kinds of wiring that we're going to cover. There's the kind of wiring that we're to connect wires to tabbed battery cells, like this one. And then there's the wiring for connecting bolt terminals, like these. Now, they are pretty different for one reason. The reason being that tabbed wires you can only connect to each terminal one time. And the way that we will connect is with our quick disconnects. That's what they're called. So these simply snap on to this terminal. They just slide on. We can only do that once, whereas with bolt disconnects, or with bolt terminals, we can connect as many times as we want. So the bolt comes off the terminal. I'm just going to show you. So with bolt terminals you can connect more than once. The bolt comes off the terminal, and we use our bolt terminal connectors, these little hoops, and you can put 1, 2, or as many as you want on here and simply screw down. Each terminal is going to need more than one wire connected to it. Therefore, bolt terminals are easier to work with, but there is a way that we can use tabbed batteries or tabbed terminals, and that is by using squeeze connectors. I got these at Radio Shack for $2.49. I'm going to show you where to buy even more for a lot less money. Now, the way this works is that you can connect two wires, or you can connect one wire to any existing wire. So you put your first wire in place, and then you would take another wire and you can tap into that wire simply by clamping on there, and then you get your pliers and you squeeze this shut and fold this over. So if that doesn't make a lot of sense right now, don't worry about it. I'm going to show you later how that works. To begin wiring our tabbed batteries, you're going to need a few things. Number one, you're going to need a battery. Number two, you're going to need your quick disconnects. You're going to need your squeeze connectors. You're going to need your wire cutters and stripping tool. And you're going to need wire. Now, when I started this video, I told you that I recommend using black and red wire. Black for negative, red for positive. Keeps things a little simpler. I do not have any red wire immediately available, so we're going to be using all black wire. Okay, the first thing that we want to do is open the box, and we're going to be getting rid of the lid because it gets in the way. So we're just going to take it off like I showed you before. Just slide it to the right, pull it off. Okay. Now, I'm going to be using this 175 watt battery. The battery that I'm going to have you use is a Rayovac battery. It's bigger. You can buy two 10 amp batteries, which is 120 watts. Your total would be 240 watts. Or you can use one 20 amp battery with volt terminals. That is what I recommend that you use. But we're going to need to start with this one. So we've got everything in place. We have our ports in place. We have our battery in place. We've got our switch in place. And our voltmeter. We're going to start by wiring the USB port. Now, if you'll remember from our diagram, we've got the positive going to the switch, and then we continue our positive connection from the switch to the positive terminal on the battery. Okay? So, positive to positive to positive. Then our negative connection is going to go straight from negative to the negative terminal on the battery. The switch will break the flow of electricity on the positive side, and that's what's going to turn our USB port on and off. Alright? So we've got our wire. This is 14 gauge wire. If you look on your stripping tool, they're numbered. I don't know if you can see that very well here. There's number 14. So we're going to put the wire on the 14 gauge setting. You don't want to strip a lot off because these you don't need a lot of wires showing to use these quick disconnects. Squeeze down and pull off. So there we go. There's your wire. Now, you want to attach your quick disconnect onto the end of your wire. Now, we have two sizes of quick disconnects. We have a larger size and we have a smaller size. The smaller connectors go on to the battery. They fit on the switch, but the USB ports they need, and the 12 volt and the voltmeter, they need the larger ones. Okay? So, and again, don't worry about this right now. I'm going to show you where to buy these. So we're going to connect our first connector. We've got our stripped wire. Simply place the connector onto the wire. And use your crimping tool, which is this little notched out area. Simply put it on the connector like that, and you're going to squeeze to clamp it shut. Give it a good squeeze. There we go. So this is now connected. It's not going to come off. We're going to go ahead and clamp the first connector onto the positive terminal. Now, remember, you can see on the port there's positive, and there's negative. It's clearly marked. I don't know if you can see on the camera, but you'll see it in real life and you'll know what I'm talking about. So we're going to connect this to the positive. And that just slides right on. It's now connected. Okay. Now we're going to go from our positive terminal on the USB port to the positive terminal on the switch, just like in the diagram. Positive to positive, then positive to positive. Okay? So, here's our first connection. Going to measure it about to there. Again, strip the end of the wire. Okay. Now we're going to attach our second disconnect. Okay, so you'll see the wire, the tip of the wire sticking out. You don't want it to show a lot, just enough. Clamp down. And connect to the first switch. Alright, so we've got our first connection from positive to the middle prong on the switch. That's your next positive. Now we're going to go negative to negative. So we're going to connect our negative terminal on the USB port to the negative side on the battery. We're going to leave this open for now, and I'll show you why later. Now, we're also going to connect the 12-volt outlet. So we're going to go from the bottom, and we're going to connect directly to the terminals, because the 12-volt is not going to be controlled by a switch. It's going to go straight to the battery. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. Alright, so we've got our 12-volt outlet wired up. We've got the negative and the positive terminals connected. I removed the USB wires for now because I want this to be understandable and not look like a giant nest of wires. So this is our positive wire coming from the 12-volt outlet. This is our negative wire. We're going to go ahead and connect the positive wire to the positive terminal on the battery. Now we're going to connect our negative wire. Okay. So now this 12-volt port is active. However, it doesn't technically become active until you plug something into it. Alright, let's put our USB wires back in place. Now, our negative wire needs to connect to the negative terminal. And remember, before I was telling you, you can only connect one wire to each terminal. So we now need two connections. We need the negative wire for the 12-volt port, and we need the negative wire for the USB. We need that to go to the same terminal. Since we cannot connect two wires to the same terminal, we're going to use our squeeze connectors. And instead of connecting directly to the terminal, we're going to tap into this wire here. This is the negative wire going to the 12-volt port, remember. So what we do, take our squeeze connector, and you can see there's two sides to this. One side you can only go part of the way through. The other side you can go all the way through. So we're going to install the end of our USB port wire into the port, and you just push it in as far as it'll go. Then the other side, we're simply going to clamp onto this wire here. Or if you want, it might be easier to go ahead and clamp this thing on like that. So that's clamped in place, and then take your wire and put it in place like that. Okay, we're going to take some pliers. I told you before that pliers were optional. If you're using this method, I guess they're not really that optional. You kind of need them. So we're going to push this connector down as far as it'll go, as close to that terminal as it will go. Make sure that everything is solidly in place. And you simply squeeze this metal tab until it becomes embedded in the two wires, and thereby connecting the two wires electrically. So we're just going to grab it and we're going to squeeze it. Squeeze it pretty much as hard as you can. And there we go. Our USB port negative wire, negative terminal, is now connected to the same negative terminal as the 12-volt port. And you can take this and snap it shut, and that's done. Next, we're going to connect our positive terminal from the switch to the positive wire, which is coming from the 12-volt port. Because remember, we've got positive coming to the positive terminal on the switch, and now we need to continue that positive flow from the switch to the positive terminal on the battery. So we're going to get another quick disconnect. Let's strip our wire again. And again, we've got our wire tab here, the squeeze connector, whatever you want to call it, and we're going to attach it here. So we now have our USB port and our 12-volt outlet connected to the battery through the power switch. We've got the negative terminal of the USB port going to the negative terminal on the battery. We have the positive terminal of the USB port, which would be this wire here. This wire here going to the positive terminal on the switch. Then we've got our positive going from the switch to the positive on the battery, all through quick disconnects. Now, if you take a look at the USB port and you flip the switch on, you can see you have power going to the USB port. You can switch it on and off by using the switch. Now, if you look at the switch, you'll notice when you turn it on, there still is no light on the LED switch. Even though the switch is active, it does deliver power to the USB port, it does its job, but the light doesn't turn on. The reason for that is because there's one terminal left on the switch, and that terminal needs to go to the battery. The only purpose of connecting this negative terminal to the negative terminal on the battery is to provide power to the LED, which is on the switch. Without that negative connection, the LED has no electrical flow. So we want to connect this negative terminal to this negative terminal on the battery, as you can see in the diagram here. So we've got negative to negative, then we have positive to positive, positive to positive. So we've got this flow of electricity going from the positive terminal on the battery to the positive terminal on the USB port. The switch simply breaks that flow, which is what turns the USB ports on and off. Now, the negative terminal on the battery going to the negative terminal on the switch simply allows the switch LED light to turn on. Without this negative current flow of electricity, the LED light has no power. So we want to give that light power by connecting to the negative terminal on the battery. Again, we're going to use a quick disconnect. I'm sorry, not a quick disconnect. The switch connector. Squeeze connector. And we're going to connect to this wire again. This is the wire going to the negative terminal on the USB port. I'm sorry, the 12-volt outlet. Alright, so we've got our switch wired up. We now have the negative terminal connected to the negative terminal. And now, when you turn the switch on, the LED light comes on, as well as the USB port that also powers up. So, there we go. Now again, the only function of this switch is to break the positive connection. The only purpose of the negative connection on the switch is to power the LED light. So that's that. Next, we're going to cover the voltmeter. Now, the voltmeter technically needs to connect straight to the battery. So we could go positive to positive, negative to negative. The only problem with this scenario is that the voltmeter would always be on. It would never turn off. So what we want to do is connect the voltmeter through the switch. So we're going to go negative to negative, and then we're going to go positive, and we're going to tap into this positive wire that's already running to the switch for the USB port. So it's going to go negative to negative, positive to positive. We're going to tap right into here using our squeeze connector again. So here we go. At the beginning of this video, I told you that you might want a soldering iron, and I said that it wasn't completely necessary, that it was kind of optional, and now I'm going to show you why you might want a soldering iron. If you look at the voltmeter, you can see there's not a whole lot of room between the meter and the battery. You've got those two prongs coming off the voltmeter. They're almost touching the battery, which means that you don't have any room to connect your wires, because you see these quick disconnects, they extend quite a bit off of the actual unit. So the only way to tackle this problem is to go in sideways. And what I have done in the past, and what you can do if you want, is I put the wire on from the top or the bottom, and I solder it into place so it becomes a permanent connection. I'm not going to cover soldering in this video. There's lots of other videos out there on YouTube that you can watch to learn how to solder. What I'm going to do for the purpose of this demonstration is I got these little insulated clamps at Radio Shack. You squeeze it, it opens, you let go, and it closes. These clamps are what I'm going to use to connect from the top to the voltmeter. So we'll still have our connection, and we don't have to worry about soldering, and we don't have to worry about space either. So that's what I'm going to use. Again, I got these at Radio Shack. It was like $3 for a pretty big bag. You most likely could find these cheaper on eBay, or I might order a whole bunch of these and sell them to you myself. Now, alright, so the way this works, I actually didn't take any time to figure this out before I started this video. Looks to me like you should be able to pull this out. There we go. So you connect your wire here, and same concept as the quick disconnects. You strip the end of your wire, then you place the stripped end onto that little clamp there, and you crimp it shut. Let's see if I can do this right the first time. Alright. So it's easier to get it into your clamp first, and then put the wire inside, then apply the pressure. There we go. Now, we're going to put the insulator back on the clamp, and this is important because you don't want these clamps accidentally touching each other or the wall of the box. You want them to be completely protected and insulated, isolated. Okay, so you want to put the insulator onto the wire first and then attach the clamp to the wire. There we go. Alright, you want to make sure that you connect these to the right terminals. Now we want to connect to the positive wire leading to the positive terminal on the switch so that the voltmeter will turn on and off with the switch button. So we've got our wire connector here. Okay, we have our squeeze connector in place. Now we're inserting the voltmeter positive terminal wire. Clamp that shut. Okay, our positive connection is now in place. Now we're going to do the negative connection. We're just gonna get this out. One thought that I had to deal with the issue of space was to install the voltmeter on the front of the box here, or coming in the back. You can really put it wherever you want. It doesn't have to go in the front. It's probably a better idea to put it where you know there's going to be room I just thought it looked better on the front, so that's what I did. But you can do what you want. So we're going to put our clamp insulator on the wire first. Strip the end. Connect the clamp to the bare end of the wire. And I use the wire stripper tool to hold the clamp open so that I can get this insulator back over the top of the clamp. Then you can close it. And there you go. Okay. We are going to connect the negative side of the voltmeter now to the negative wire. Okay, now you can see the voltmeter is currently inactive. When we turn our switch on, the voltmeter is now on, along with the USB port. So the port, the voltmeter, the switch, they all become active when you power the switch on, turn the switch off, and the voltmeter turns off. So there's a lot of ways that you can do this, and I trust that you are able to figure out whichever method you want to use. Next, we're going to cover the SAE port. We want to be able to have the battery charge when we plug this into a charger. Okay, the SAE port wires are buried kind of far down there, so I'm just going to show you here. This is an SAE port. As you know, we installed it here. Alright, so the wires, you've got two wires coming off of this. You've got positive, you've got negative. Alright, we're going to connect these in exactly the same way that we connected every other wire during this demonstration. You would take the positive wire and you would use a squeeze connector to connect it to the positive terminal, and then same thing for the negative. You would take your squeeze connector and connect to the negative, and that's all there is to it. Okay, all of our wiring is done except for one thing. We have not connected the fuse, and I saved this till last just because there's such a mess of wires in there. I wanted to keep things as simple as possible up until now. On this fuse, you've got two wires coming off. There is no negative or positive on the fuse. It's just one wire with the fuse in between. This will protect your generator from overloading. If you connect a current that is too high for the internal wiring to handle, the fuse will break and it will stop all electrical current from flowing, and then you would simply replace the fuse. You can get these at AutoZone or really just about anywhere. This is a 15 amp fuse. The reason that I chose 15 amps is because we're using a 14 gauge wire which is rated at 17 amps. You can go a little bit lower, maybe 10 amps if you really want to be extra safe, but I think 15 amps should be fine. So put your fuse in, and then at the end of each wire I went ahead and I used a quick disconnect, and I used a male quick disconnect, and all we have to do here, you want to put this on the positive side, so you're just going to pull this positive wire out from the positive terminal, and you're going to connect this end to the positive. Now we've got the blade connector here, and we can simply connect this. This isn't exactly a pretty wiring job. When you do it yourself, I'm sure you can make it a little neater. But there we go. So now we've got this fuse. It's connected right at the base. You want this to be the very first thing in line to the terminal before anything else. So nothing else is connected to after this fuse. It's fused to positive, and all the other connections are before the fuse. So if anything goes wrong in any of this wiring, it has to get past the fuse before it reaches the battery. So if there's anything that's overheating or overloading, this fuse is going to blow, and it's going to protect your battery from being damaged or exploding, even worse. And that's it. Okay, everything that I've showed you up to this point was a method for wiring up a tabbed battery. Now remember, we've got the bolt connector battery, and remember that I showed you can attach these little guys onto any terminal. You can attach as many as you want. And these work exactly the same way as your quick disconnects. You thread your wire, you insert it into here, then you clamp it. So all of the same principles apply to this as the tabbed battery connector. This is better. I showed you both ways because I want you to have the option of using any battery that you want. But this method is better because instead of using these squeeze connects, you can use as many of these connectors as you want, and you can bolt it directly to the positive and the negative. So this will keep your wiring a lot neater, and it'll keep things a lot simpler. So you use these instead of quick disconnects, and instead of using squeeze connectors, you would simply stack as many of these as you need to each terminal. So you're eliminating this, and you're keeping your wiring a lot neater. Now in the first box that I showed you, you could use either the tabbed batteries, or you could use a larger 20 amp 240 watt battery. Now if you want to build a 420 watt generator, you would use all of the concepts that I just showed you, and you would use a larger ammo box. This is the this ammo box will hold a VMAX 420 watt battery. So you can make a big one, you can make a little one, or you can find a different box and you can make a really big one. Really, the sky's the limit. As long as you understand all of the things that I just showed you, you can make any kind of generator that you really want. So that concludes our video. Thanks for watching.